while observing the George Floyd protests of the last month or so, and while observing the police response to them, I've noticed a very alarming trend in the way that the police have acted. And this is that the police have very much paralleled the behavior of U.S. armed forces in America's wars abroad. I mean, the whole approach that they've taken has seemed to overall be one of trying to pacify the population through intimidating the civilians in addition to the people who they're more directly fighting. The police have started shooting at random people just for being on their porches, and have pushed an innocent old man to the ground, even though he was doing absolutely nothing to antagonize them, and they've weaponized curfews to enact violence against peaceful protesters because they've had this overall goal of trying to pacify the population through what's essentially acts of terrorism, acts of making people too afraid to want to really challenge them. And there's several reasons for why the police in America have taken up this militarized warlike mentality, this mentality that's as if they're an army that's occupying a foreign nation, as if they were fighting a war in Iraq or Afghanistan. There's several reasons for this. One of them is that in recent years, U.S. security forces have been Israelified. They've become a lot more like the police and military forces in Israel, which have the goal of violently repressing Palestinians and waging a war for colonization. And this is largely because U.S. police forces have in recent years been directly trained by the Israeli armed forces. So they've more taken on the methods and mentalities of Israel's armed forces. Another reason is that in the last decade or so, as the police have been militarized and as the excess military equipment left over from the invasions of Iraq and Afghanistan have made their way into local police departments, the police in America have become a lot more like the American military. And this has evidently translated into the mentalities that they have, the kinds of policing cultures that they have, in order to be able to carry out the actions that we've seen in the last months, the actions that indicate that their mission is essentially to occupy the homeland and act as invading, occupying forces that are trying to pacify the population, like I said. There's a very sinister and very disturbing underlying motive behind all of this, because the U.S. military has for a long time been anticipating a scenario where the American armed forces, and by extension the American police forces, would have to act as an invading force against the American population. In multiple statements from the military in recent years, such as the one from Pentagon training video from 2016, I'll link that video below. This training video explains how the Pentagon anticipates that in a future where the population is overwhelmed by poverty and unemployment, and dissension grows and an uprising starts, the military will have to respond in similar ways to how it's waged war abroad. And another statement from the military, a U.S. Army War College document from 2016 describes how they anticipate that the U.S. will have to be fighting what they call contemporary Stalingrads again in potential near future, where the population grows uneasy and angry and rises up. So the top levels of government, the top levels of the national security state, have been preparing for a scenario like this for a long time, especially since the 2008 financial crisis and the collapse of the economy, and the reality that all these people are being left behind amid the collapse of neoliberalism and the explosion of inequality. So they've been planning out a response like this. It's often been observed in recent years that as the American empire collapses, its wars from abroad are coming home. And in this last month in particular, we've seen evidence of this.